Okay. Furones, is weather a factor Sunday? I haven't even looked because I'm not going to the game.
I think it's just like
Normal.
50-ish. I did look
Yeah.
earlier,
Let me figure it out real quick
when
here.
I came back. Let me see. It's 40 degrees right now in Washington. Yeah, Sunday, well, there could be rain too. Um, 56, 45, the high and the low for
Ooh,
Sunday, meaning Sunday afternoon would be the highs. So
okay.
yeah, in the mid 50s right now, dipping into, yeah, just mid to low 50s is what it
Okay.
should be.
Probably, yeah, probably kind of typical. I
Yeah.
don't think DC gets a whole lot of snow. I
Mhm.
get kind of gets cold up there, but not really that much
Chance of
snow.
rain.
Yeah,
Chance of
that's it.
rain, it says now. So
All right.
that's all. All right.
I'm good. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yes, sir.
Hang on. Hang on. Let me kill this audio. Uh, okay, here we go. Ready. We are almost into December football. The Miami Dolphins 8-3 for the second consecutive year. Now, last year we all remember the Dolphins went 0-4 in December. They will not go winless this December. In fact, they could secure the number one playoff seed in the AFC before the month is done. How about that? What's up, Dolphins fans? It's Chris Perkins, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist, along with my boy David Furones, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins writer. As a reminder, you can get this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. So the Dolphins firmly in first place in the AFC East at 8-3, 2.5 games over Buffalo, which is 6-6. We're going to look at the race for number one in the AFC. We're going to talk about why this year's 8-3 record feels more solid than last year's 8-3 record. And we're going to talk about how the Dolphins will get over the injury to Jalen Phillips, the Achilles injury. There's a reported signing of pass rusher Jason Pierre-Paul. There's a lot to discuss. Let's dive in. Furones, welcome, man. And as always, we want to welcome everybody who's there on the chat. Roger Allman and Nizzle. Nizzle, sorry, Dave Hyde is not here. Pretty boy, I see you. Cat for life. Noop 942001. Judy Williams is here without Dave Hyde. How about that? Let's see if we can keep her attention. What's up to everybody? Thanks
Pressure's
for
on me
joining
here.
us. So,
Pressure's on me.
Furones,
Everyone's looking for Dave Hyde, and I gotta
Furones,
pull through
the
here.
Dolphins in fourth place in the AFC, behind Baltimore, behind Kansas City, behind Jacksonville. The Dolphins are ahead of Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Indianapolis. Before we go into the specifics on the schedule, what do you think of how the Dolphins have played so far, getting to 8-3? What are your thoughts on the season so far?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's another season of 8-3 back to back now, and then we're gonna get to it a little bit on the show. Is just this one just feels a lot more different because
Yes.
we know they got to 8-3 with a 5 game winning streak last year against a lot of weaker competition, and then the schedule was just about to get tough. This team just feels a lot more whole. It's another year of Tua in Mike McDaniel's system, another year of just Mike McDaniel's system overall. The O-line's a lot stronger. There's a run game presence. The defense is there with Fangio, and Jalen Ramsey's there now finally, and still they can still manage to get healthier with Devon Achane. We're monitoring Teron Armstead, so I think there's a lot going well for this team, and it's a better 8-3 than it was in 2022.
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, one of the big things is the Dolphins were 8-3 last year, and they can build on that experience. It wasn't necessarily a good experience from 8-3 to the rest of the season. You had injuries. You had the 0-4 December. You had the loss to Buffalo, two losses to Buffalo, really, regular season and in the playoffs. But like you said, this one, you've got Jalen Ramsey. That's a huge swing factor. You've got Vic Fangio, another huge swing factor, and you've got experience. You've got these guys have been through the December football under Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel has been through December football as a head coach. So I think a lot of these things are working in the Dolphins' favor. And look, Furones, now let's go to the schedule because look, the Dolphins 8-3, 4 of their last 5 games are at home. And when we look at the schedules among Miami and Kansas City and Baltimore and Jacksonville, the teams that are really up there, we see that look, Baltimore probably has the toughest schedule. They've got 4 consecutive tough games among Jacksonville. Baltimore plays Jacksonville, San Francisco, Miami, and Pittsburgh. That's brutal. That is absolutely brutal. Miami has 3 consecutive tough games. We know that they finished with Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo. Jacksonville also has 3 consecutive tough games with Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Baltimore. And then Kansas City is the one that has their tough games spread out. They've got 3 tough games, but it's Buffalo, Cincy, and the LA Chargers. Do the consecutive tough games make a difference in your mind, Furones? To me, they do. You don't get a break in this December football. The injured guys don't get as long to heal up. So in a way, I would give Kansas City a bit of an advantage there. But does it matter if you have consecutive tough games or if they're spread out? And do you consider Cincinnati and Buffalo tough games for teams like Miami, Kansas City, and Jacksonville?
Well, that's what I was going to get to, is specifically with Cincinnati. The ones that have Cincy, I don't think those are tough games anymore. No Joe Burrow.
Right.
Nah, those ain't the same Bengals with Jake Browning at quarterback. Now at this point, this is a wasted year for the Bengals. So if you're calling Cincy a tough game for Kansas City and Jacksonville, and I don't see that. Buffalo, I still see that because, yeah, you did just watch them compete very hard against Philly in Philly. So still, they played well in that game. Josh Allen had a decent game, just that turnover between the 2 Eagles touchdowns, got the Eagles back up in front. And then obviously the big kick to send them into overtime, and then Jalen Hurts finishing them off. So definitely Kansas City and Jacksonville looks like they have the easiest of those schedules. And Baltimore, you'd have to call it the toughest one because they have the games against Jacksonville and Miami, plus San Francisco on top of that, and a divisional brawl, which we always know in the AFC North is tough against Pittsburgh. But they also do have that late bye, too, the latest bye of these teams. So that could help them out as well.
Yeah, and Judy Williams agrees with you. She says, I'm not sure the Bengals and Chargers should be considered tough games at this point.
Chargers, too, yeah.
Yeah. And so, the Bengals, I give some weight to teams that have been to the playoffs. And that's what the Bengals and the Chargers are. They're teams that have been to the playoffs, and it's December football. But you're right, and Judy is right. I mean, look, with no Joe Burrow, Cincinnati is a lot of the teeth is out, but they do still have Joe Mixon, and they do still have the good receivers, and the defense is decent. But yeah, without Burrow, I agree. I just respect them, and the Chargers. It's hard to say you respect the Chargers, right? I mean, Brandon State.
I was gonna stop you right there because their playoff experience is blowing. What was it, a 27-point lead against Jacksonville? That's their experience. So, Bengals, I get the playoff experience factor, but that was also with Joe Burrow back there.
Yeah, it was, and you do still have the good receivers, but you're right, but again, and look, and I'll say this, that both Kansas City and Jacksonville play Cincinnati at home, and so that's an added benefit for Kansas City and Jacksonville, that you're not going to Cincinnati. Kansas City is going to the Chargers, and so that could make a small amount of difference. But look, we've been out to Chargers games, Furones. It's going to be a Kansas City crowd, right? It's going to be like 60% Chiefs fans.
Yeah. If SoFi Stadium is a 50% Dolphins crowd, the times we've been, then I think Kansas City is going to show up and show out there. But most importantly, and even before you get, and I know right now a lot of the focus is going toward the seeding now, but just what the Dolphins have already done, to get to 2.5 games up on the Buffalo Bills for the division, I think we have to pay homage to that a little bit, that the Dolphins now in their next 3 games are going to be favored by a touchdown plus in each. Commanders, Titans, Jets again at home. They win this week while the Bills are on bye. They're up 3 games. Then they win again on Monday Night Football against Tennessee after the Bills. If they lose at Kansas City, which is a very tough one there after they just lost to Philly, then they're 4 games up with 4 games remaining, meaning the magic number in the division is 1. And then all they need at that point is to beat the Jets the following week to clinch the division, clinch before they even get to that final 3-game stretch, which is a very difficult one. So pretty remarkable. 99% chance at this point to make the playoffs, 97% to win the division, according to the New York Times playoff simulator. So and if you win the division, that at least gets you a home playoff game. So that's huge. And really my eyes are on that Ravens game, week 17. That's going to be immense in determining seeding among the division winners. And I have a feeling that one will get flexed to Sunday Night Football because right now it's Packers-Vikings. We don't need to see that after what we just watched from Minnesota on Monday Night Football. So that Dolphins-Ravens game will be the prime game of that Week 17. I have a feeling we end up spending New Year's in Baltimore as a game goes final.
Yep. I have that same feeling. I think those last two, probably Baltimore and Buffalo, right? Probably get flexed.
Yeah,
The Buffalo even. Yeah. Even though the Buffalo game could be fairly meaningless. Look, real quick, from the chat, what's up to Tervalis Tinker from the Bahamas, baby, joining us from the Bahamas. So like to see that. Rob says what you said, Furones. We could win the division with 3 weeks still left. And that's what I mentioned. It's December football, but the Dolphins could really end all the drama like early in the month of December, and that would be great to see.
And get that done, because you don't want to go into that final 3-game stretch with things still in the balance. So if you can get that done, get it out of the way.
Right. You don't want to go into that final 3-game stretch needing to win like 2 of those games to get home field advantage or whatever the situation may be. Now, and I guess I should say to win the division, home field advantage is going to be a different situation. Yeah.
You want those games for the home field advantage, but then just get the division out of the way at that point.
Yeah, and you would hopefully the Dolphins are in a very good position where they don't need that Buffalo victory, but they probably will need that Buffalo victory. Furones, real quick, when you look at this Dolphins team and having success in December and January, what would you say are the keys? For me, number one key is health. And look, I've said this before, we're at the stage with Tua now where you really can't afford a 2 or 3 weeks layoff. He's almost got to start all 17. We have the 3 games, this 3-game stretch here that's coming up with Washington, Tennessee, and the Jets. But then after that, we know that they finished Dallas, Baltimore, Buffalo, and then it's on to the playoffs. So you're almost at the point when you talk health that Tua's got to start all 17 games, almost at that point. So health, and it's not just Tua, Teron Armstrong, right? That's a health concern. Health is my number one thing. The number 2 thing is you've got to show that you can beat these good teams, and that's the last 3. And because it might be crucial for home field or playoff seeding, not even so much to get it in your mind, but just to ensure that you get as many home playoff games as possible. And then the number 3 thing is the turnover margin. The Dolphins are at -5, and I'll point out the last time I looked, Kansas City and Detroit both also at -5, and -5 can be wiped out in a 2-game stretch. But we've been saying that for weeks now, and it hasn't been wiped out. It hasn't. As a matter of fact, it's gone the wrong way. They were -4 before last game, and then they have the 3 turnovers. They lose the battle 3-2. Now they're -5. So I've got health, beating good teams, mostly to ensure for the home playoff games as many as possible, and turnover margin. You have 2 or 3 keys that would be key down the stretch here for the Dolphins.
Yeah, but Perk, one of those turnovers was to set up the epic 99-yard interception return for a touchdown off a Hail Mary. Tim Boyle would never be throwing that Hail Mary had Tua not thrown the interception beforehand. He just had the incredible foresight to see it all develop beforehand. No, it's definitely the turnovers. I mean, Tua needs to clean that up. That was the only way they were keeping the Jets in the game to that point. He even said it himself. So it's on those short outs. He's got to understand which throws he can and can't make. I know Mike McDaniel also took some of the brunt for his play calls in those situations. So just the marriage of understanding what he has in his quarterback and what Tua has as far as his abilities, what throws he can and can't get to the receiver. So and situationally, of course, Tua can't be turning the ball over in those situations. And then the Dolphins were very fortunate that then Hail Mary going the other way, where the Jets were trying to take a lead with a Hail Mary before halftime, and then the Dolphins pretty much end the game at that point. There was no chance the Jets were going to come back the way they were playing on offense.
Right. Hey, shouts out to Nizzle in Medellin, Colombia. How about that?
All right.
Yeah, we like to see that, baby. Shouts to Swampy McGee, to Lee Connolly. Lee Connolly from the UK saying, evening from the UK, would you get cute with seedings if the Bills are still in the playoffs? And let's see, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but look,
I think they're talking about if you would want to win or lose to influence seeding to get a certain matchup.
Okay, yeah. So
if you look at the matchup of who you'd face on a given seed.
If you could manipulate that, yes. I would say yes. I mean, now look, the Dolphins, as long as the Dolphins are at home, I really don't have much concern about a first-round opponent. Second round, it's going to get a lot tougher. But first round, I think they're fine. But you know what? If necessary, 100%, because you want to win that. You want to win as many playoff games as possible. If you can give yourself an advantage by getting cute, 100%, I'm going for it.
Yeah, sure. And maybe I think what they're asking is if you would try to avoid Buffalo. I mean, I don't think you look at it that way. I think you want to just win your games, get the best seeding possible, because you do want to play for the future rounds where you want to be at home, whether if it is to get the number one seed, playoff bye, first round wild card bye, and then go home field advantage throughout. Road to the Super Bowl goes through Miami. That would be the ultimate goal. And if you're the number two seed, you are at home for the divisional round. That's what you want. You only have to win one true road game to get to the Super Bowl. So I think you look at it more that way. Yeah, I mean, the Bills being a divisional opponent that obviously earlier in the season beat the Dolphins by 4 touchdowns, maybe that is a team. Yeah, that's not the one that you do want to see, but you got to beat whoever you do get in the wild card round at home. The Dolphins should handle that in that situation. So I don't think you look at it as, okay, do we avoid Buffalo or do we want Buffalo? So it would just be whoever's in front of you, you beat them and you keep marching on.
And then there's some Buffalo concern here on the chat. Rob, assuming we win the division, but KC is the number one seed. I sure hope we don't have a playoff game at home to the Bills. On their day, their ceiling is very high. Swampy McGee, Bills at Dolphins first round could happen. In parentheses, don't want that. And, Rob says, not worry, but we will need to push for the number 1 or 2 seed. Pretty Boy says he thinks 13 wins for the Dolphins.
I'll tell you what, on that front, if it's a situation where the Bills need to get in with a win at Miami week 18, and they get that win, season sweep of the Dolphins, and then the Dolphins end up with that matchup a week later, then yeah, that's you got swept by them in the regular season. Now you got to face them another week. But I will also say it's tough to win 3 in a row against a team in your division. So I would see a very daunting task for the Bills to win back-to-back games in Miami and then also pull off a 3-0 season sweep. It would just seem like a lot for Buffalo to get in and get through that way.
Yeah, and it would be a huge disappointment, obviously, for the Dolphins. I really, Furones, I mean, this team has been so good at home and so confident at home. I don't have much fear of them at home, and we'll see if that changes down the stretch when they host Dallas and host Buffalo. But I feel pretty good about this team at home. It's just when they have to go on the road against a quality team, then I get a little bit shaky. But I really don't have any fear. If they stay at Hard Rock, that's why you got to beat those good teams so you can stay at Hard Rock as long as possible in January. So we'll see how that turns out.
And the coldest will be worst case scenario like 40s. That's if the coldest of cold fronts comes in January and it's in the 40s. That
exactly.
You can control that much.
Right, and that would be a welcome change for about 24 hours for us, right? After that, put us back in the 70s, baby. I
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
sunshine in the
Yeah,
winter.
and more likely it's going to be in the 60s or 70s
Right,
in
right,
January.
more likely, more likely. All right, Furones, let's migrate over to segment number two and talk about why this year's 8-3 start feels better than last year's 8-3 start. And I will start you off in a place that most people wouldn't start off, the run game. And I think the last couple of weeks against the Raiders and against the Jets, and I've written about this on sunsentinel.com, the Dolphins have played big boy football. And it's not only the offensive line and the defense, it's that run game. Because this was a finesse, pretty boy, big play run game, right? With Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane and what we saw in training camp from Savon Ahmed. Jeff Wilson is a physical runner, but he's not a bruising runner. He's not that short yardage guy. Chris Brooks was the closest that we came to seeing a short yardage guy, and he gets the injury. But even he got what, 52-yard run against Denver. So all of these guys are capable, and that was kind of their image. And somebody asked Alec Ingold about this yesterday. And Ingold said, yeah, when you crunch all those numbers and you see what this team does and the speed and all of that, it's easy to draw that narrative, but he thinks that they have showed a more physical side the last couple of weeks. And the reason that that's significant for owners, as you know, when you talk about December football, that run game and cold weather, it becomes more important as you start playing in cold, windy, rainy conditions sometimes. So I like the run game as a starting place. Where do you like as a starting place for why this 8-3 start feels better than last year?
Yeah, the run game has taken strides, and Mike McDaniel has trusted it more, but now we want to see him trust it maybe a little more in those short yardage situations where the team still isn't coming through all the time. And sometimes, yeah, you are seeing those 3rd and 1s where Mike McDaniel likes to go to the pass. So maybe more consistently go to it. I know he bases it off of the looks he gets from the defense. So, but sometimes don't overthink it. Just you can pound it. You trust your O-line. Your O-line has been run blocking well this year with the improvements it has made under Butch Barry, despite all the shuffling and whoever's coming in and out. So go ahead and trust that O-line that you're going to get that 1 yard, even if you're not running with the most physical of runners, but you guys that still have that in them. And Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson he has some power to his game as well. So, and then now it could just take a whole nother step now with Devon Achane if he can stay healthy and consistently stay healthy with that knee that he's been dealing with. So that'll be a huge boost now, especially having an extra weekend after that sort of a mini bye. It's coming off of a Friday game. Usually we talk about it with a Thursday game, but he was already questionable going into the Jets game. So that would be huge if you can get him back this week and then just slowly just keep ramping him up as you get down the stretch.
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, when you look at, well, actually, let's go out to the chat real quick because I saw a good question from Rob. It's almost a Furones bonus question is how it's addressed here. Almost. When was the last Dolphins team that could be as good as this current one? For me, it's probably 1985. This team not fully proven, but that's the path we are on. Boy, 85, that's a long way. I think, those teams that I covered in the early 2000s with Jay Fiedler at quarterback, and they had that great defense with Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas, Sam Madison, Pat Surtain. The quarterback held them back. The expectations were as high, but to 85, Rob might be correct. He might be correct. I hadn't thought about that, but he might be correct. That could be because this team is better than the 2000 teams. I say that now they haven't won a playoff game, but right now I think they are. Verona, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, those early 2000s teams are the ones that I grew up on. A little bit, I was still kind of too young, but late 90s of Dan Marino, seeing him. But yeah, those are the last teams that have won playoff games for the Dolphins. And I certainly see this team as more whole. Whereas, yeah, those teams, they were anchored by the defense. Then Ricky Williams came along. But then once Ricky Williams was there, 02 and 03, the Dolphins actually missed the playoffs in those 2 seasons. So disappointment there after they made the playoffs, lost in the wild card round to Baltimore in 01. And then 2000, that was the last playoff win against the Colts. And then got blown out in Oakland. 99, won against Seattle, but then got blown out by Jacksonville in that one. So definitely, yeah, this team I see as having a lot more potential than those teams, and where they got to where it was just kind of one win, and then you're really out of it in the divisional round. You're outclassed in that round. This team does have the ability to go further. So yeah, then if you go past that, then maybe you're looking at is it some of the earlier to mid Dan Marino years. So maybe you have to go back to the 80s, or if this team indeed competes for a Super Bowl and gets there. Are you talking about those 70s teams, the 72 and 73 teams? Probably a lot of the 80s teams and maybe even early 90s could vie for being up there, right there with this team. But yeah, I would say you got to go back a while. It's not. It's pretty much outside of my football consciousness, I would say.
You're a football historian, Furones. Stop with that.
But yes, I am a historian, so I am aware of the great Dolphins teams of the past, at least that were going before I was born.
Yeah. There you go. That's the way to save it, baby. Hey, so we mentioned the defense being better. Mike McDaniel is also better. That's another reason I think this 8-3 start feels better than last year's 8-3 start. And that ties into the run game as well, that last year they were, I want to say, 31st or 30th in rushing attempts. This year, they're in the top half of the league. They might be like 12 or 15. And so Mike McDaniel has grown as a coach, right? He's not relying as heavily on that pass game. Now, short yardage, that's a different deal, but they've had some decent success on third down, not necessarily third and short. But McDaniel is better. I mentioned Tua must stay healthy. Tua has been healthy. And so, there's been no indications of, consistent offensive line breakdowns to put him in danger. And hats off to that offensive line once again, because the guys are falling left and right. They were without 4 starters at one point against the Jets, and that's if you consider Isaiah Wynn a starter. But they had Lester Cotton at left guard, Kendall Lamb at left tackle, and then right guard.
Well, Keon Smith came in first because Kendall Lamb had the back issue.
Correct.
Then Keon Smith moved to right tackle. Right. Kendall Lamb went in despite the back. So
and Liam at right guard. Yeah.
Right. Liam was at right guard. Lester Cotton, he went into the injury tent as well.
Yes, he did.
But then he returned, correct?
He returned. Yep, he returned. Yeah. So McDaniel is better. Tua is healthy. And then when you talk about the defense being better, Jalen Ramsey is here. Vic Fangio is here. Ramsey is just, my goodness, Rodas. This dude, 3 interceptions. And to me, I was trying to get Christian Wilkins on Monday to kind of answer the question, does the team walk into the arena, into the stadium with a little more swagger? When you get off the bus with Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek Hill, you're going to win, right? And I asked them in comparison, I covered the Heat before Shaq got there, Dwayne's rookie year. And that was a plucky team, a feel-good team. But then Shaq came, and it got different. You're a title contender, and other teams respect you and kind of fear you. And I think that's what it is when you take the field with Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek Hill. But do you agree with that? And what about other reasons you think this 8-3 start feels better?
Those 04 Heat team, they didn't walk into the arena the same way with Lamar Odom and Brian Grant as they did with Shaq.
Sorry, they didn't. Sorry, I was hard to believe, right?
That was a fun team, though. Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah. Good team.
What was the question?
But do you agree that you kind of walk in a little bit different with Tyreek and Jalen Ramsey? Oh, and what about McDaniel being a better coach and Tua being healthy and having Vic Fangio? Or do those contribute to why this 8-3 feels a little more sturdy than last year's?
Absolutely. On both sides of the ball, you go in with a lot of confidence. And then you talk about working in the run game. And part of the reason why you're so tempted to always pass is that you have a playmaker like Tyreek Hill. So Mike McDaniel's running the ball more, but Tyreek Hill is on a record pace receiving too. So it's really just phenomenal to have those two things working in conjunction. And then defensively, of course, now Jalen Ramsey. So opponents are going to be trying to steer clear of him, throw away from his side of the field. And then the rare occasions where you are throwing to him, then Jalen Ramsey's making these incredible interceptions, one of them being deep in the middle of the field in the end zone to seal a victory against the Raiders. So incredibly acrobatic interceptions, plays that a lot of guys are giving up the pass, and then they're just hoping to wrap up the pass catcher after the play is made, or just best case scenario, you get a hand on it, tip it, pass deflection. Hopefully, you get enough of alter the trajectory with a fingertip so that the receiver doesn't catch it. No, he's intercepting those passes like he did on that diving first one. So it's really just incredible, his ability with how long he is, athletic, and the way he reads the quarterback and breaks on a ball so well. And then now in conjunction with Javon Holland also back there, the way similar instinctive play that. And also using the punt return ability that he has developed over doing some of that in his career, is that he basically took that as a punt return because he was just camped under it. All the other receivers and even the Dolphins DBs are somewhere else in the end zone. So he's the only one apparently that knew exactly where the ball was landing, playing center field out there. And then the way he just broke as soon as he caught that ball, he knew what he had in front of him. And even when the Dolphins, they showed that elevator image, of course, Javon Holland was the one. You see his eyes before the ball has even come down to him. His eyes are already on the end zone. So he already took his eye off the ball. He already figures he has to catch. And then now is just already looking at what's in front of him. And he sees a bunch of linemen, slow guys, one athlete in Breece Hall who was blocked, and then Tim Boyle, who, as Javon Holland said, he had to take his ankles. So it was those are the type of playmakers now you have, and yeah, you walk in with a little swagger when you know you have those guys on your side.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is a this team and look, people are on the chat talking about the offensive line and hats off to Butch Berry and I agree with that. Butch Berry has come in and made a difference. And, it's a players' league, so always credit the players first. So but the offensive line has done a good job for the last couple of years, year plus under Mike McDaniel. Even last year when you had guys like Greg Little come in and do what they needed to do, and we saw Liam Eichenberg go out for 7 games last season. And we had Brandon Shell at right tackle. Yeah, who came in. And so, we're seeing that again this year. So, yeah, it is hats off to the offensive line and hats off to Butch Berry, who has come in and made these guys a little bit better. Let's see, what else have we got here on the chat? Can this team from Call of Duty 1, can this team get away from being finesse to make a push in the playoffs? And yeah, I think that they're showing us signs that they're getting away from being finesse. And that's what I liked about the Raiders game and the Jets game, is that, again, the offensive line did what it had to do. The run game did what it had to do. Look, Furones, that front seven, we know how the sacks are just stacking up, right? If I've got it right, Jalen Phillips had 6.5, Christian Wilkins 6.5, Chubb 6, Sealer 5, Agba 4, Van Ginkel 4. So that physical big boy football, we're seeing examples of that everywhere. And so I do like that this team is kind of showing a physical side. I keep saying big boy football, but this was a pretty boy team, right?
Oh, yeah, it was, but now you can play both ways. Now it can win in multiple ways. I mean, you see it just between whether it's offense or defense. It can win in a shootout like it did week 1 against the Chargers, and then now you can grind out a victory like it did against the Raiders when the offense is putting the team in a difficult situation. So, and turning the ball over on its side of the field. The defense goes ahead and wins you a game. So yeah, and they could win physical, and they could win with the finesse, with the speed. Because they have the fastest guys in the league and fastest ball carriers. I don't know if the updated stats are, but top 5, top 6 at one point of fastest ball carriers in season. So, multiple ways that this team can win games.
Yeah. In the chat, welcome to Hooked Up Joe, Stephen Smith, and Russell. Glad to see y'all in the chat here.
Not Stephen A. Smith, huh? Not Stephen A. Smith. We don't have him.
No, not Stephen A. Stephen Smith.
Okay. Because I mean, he just got off the air First Take about 30 minutes ago, so he could join us every now and then.
Oh, I'm sure he's watching. I'm sure he's watching now. Come on now. Come on. Everybody watches this show. Come on now.
I mean, everyone does. They go from First Take to Dolphins Deep Dive. That's the natural thing to do on a Tuesday at noon.
Exactly. That's what I do. That's what I do, Furones. So, all right, baby, here we go. It is time for the Furones bonus.
Oh!
There we go, Larry. There we go. Had to wait for our music there. So, all right, Furones, here's our question. Is December the most important month on the football calendar? And I'll say this, I love December football. That's kind of when you separate the men from the boys, right? And you see who's real. But January is playoff football. And so that's really meaningful. So that's a very important month. When we talk about important months, July, that's when training camp finally starts. Although August is really the training camp month. March is free agency and the start of the league year. April, the draft. September, when the season actually gets going, the regular season, and when the Dolphins, they have that home field advantage. Looks like I'm at Dolphin Stadium, right, with this humidity, and I'm wiping and I'm sweating. I should have turned my AC down lower.
No, you are, though, right? I see it in the background.
Right.
I'm right there with you.
Right. We're where we are. Every Tuesday at noon, it's where we are. And I've always said, as far as important months, November is when you finally get a good gauge on teams. That's when all right, this is what that team is all about. So what do you think? As the Dolphins' next game is in December. We know the Dolphins were 0-4 last December. What's the most important month on the football calendar to you, Furones?
I'm going to answer this with an ode to Mike McDaniel. It's the most important month of football because it's the current, as of the Dolphins' next game, month of football we're in. So the stakes are higher as the season progresses. This is a time of year when you have the playoff picture graphics constantly updating, the teams in the hunt all the way on the right, desperation for so many teams vying to stave off elimination, get into the playoffs. You also have the teams that are out of it and firing coaches still factoring in, but the playoff chase is great. January is even greater because then you've eliminated the non-playoff teams and it's all elimination games at that point. February, I mean, it's only two teams at that point in the Super Bowl, although that is the biggest game, but then you've just taken out a lot of the other teams. So it's really just for two fan bases, two cities, although everyone is tuning in. But December, because even beyond the NFL, now you have conference championships in college. The CFP gets set. Once they expand, there will be more rounds, more teams vying for spots, so that'll be very exciting. And in high school football, state championships are being played. I covered those for years, and that's amazing seeing the memories those kids create from those moments. And also the weather. When you talk about football weather, you talk about the cold. Yeah, this is a season, but most importantly, as Mike McDaniel will tell you, it's because it's the next month of football.
Oh, there you go. Look at you, man. Quoting Mike McDaniel, man. I like that. I like to see that, man.
The same way the next practice, the next day is the most important day of your life. December is the most important month of football for the Miami Dolphins.
There you go, man. There you go. Judy Williams says every month is hugely important. Hooked Up Joe says the current month. So you know what? I would have to say it probably is December, although now with the 17-game season, didn't the Dolphins have 2 January regular season games last year, right?
Yeah, the last 2 years it's been that way. This year, December 31st is week 17, so.
Yep.
So it's just one now. Yeah, but yeah, things get pushed back, and it's a 17-game regular season, so you got some January football that factors into the regular season more so than in the past.
Yeah, and so no love for the draft, right? Blank them picks. That's what you're saying. April, no love for April.
Oh, not as of the last 2 years. No chance.
I know. Well, you know what? HN is like the bright spot in the last 2 drafts, right? And then it falls off to Skylar Thompson, right? Am I correct on that?
Yeah. What? I mean, 2 years ago, Channing Tindall was the first pick late in the 3rd round, 102. If Eric Ezukama, Cameron Good, and Skylar Thompson, and then just last year, when did the Dolphins pick first? It was Cam Smith in the 2nd round. So, and then we haven't really seen him, and not defensively, at least. So, Yeah, not as of late, but to build the core, yes, 2020 draft, 2021, a lot of picks in those. So yeah, 2019 got Christian Wilkins. So yeah.
Yeah, the last two drafts have not been, like I said, Achan and then Skylar Thompson, right? As far as productivity from those.
Here's what they got in those drafts: is Tyreek Hill, is Jalen Ramsey. So you converted those picks into those players.
Exactly.
Bradley Chubb was another one, first round pick.
Yep.
That's who you selected with that first round pick.
I'll take that. I
exactly.
mean, yeah, you can't build a team like that, but you can top a team off like that,
yes.
and that's what the Dolphins have been doing here. So, all right, so December, the most important month. All right, so let's migrate on to segment 3, and it's the Jalen Phillips injury and how the Dolphins are going to adjust. Now, look, we know that Jalen, that's a major defensive loss, right? 43 tackles, 6.5 sacks, and beyond that, he's a local favorite, having gone to UM. He's a locker room favorite. The players love Jalen Phillips. He's a media favorite. We like Jalen Phillips. Andrew Van Ginkel and Emmanuel Ogbah are going to be the immediate replacements. There's a reported signing of Jason Pierre-Paul, right, JPP, to also be a pass rusher. What do you think is going to be the effect of this injury, and what is the best way for the Dolphins to adjust, Furones?
Well, first, you feel for Jalen Phillips. You think of his journey. #1 recruit in his high school class, goes to UCLA, medically retires due to a number of injuries over there, transfers to Miami, has to get into the weight room because he lost muscle after retiring, sitting out a year on the transfer, which he had to do back then. It was before the transfer portal. But in that year he sits out, he becomes a physical freak, breaks out in 2020, the COVID season for UM, a year I covered with the Hurricanes, as he ends up going in the first round to the Dolphins. I made the same flip going from covering UM to the Dolphins that same offseason. So kind of like a linked journey almost, I've always felt with Jalen Phillips. He still had that injury-prone label in that draft, but he had been healthy in his first 2 seasons, and especially that 1 year at UM, so sort of was shedding that off, but then he had to get through back and oblique ailments earlier in this season, and now this is just awful as he was just getting on a roll. He was really making an impact in that game before the injury, a sack, a couple other TFLs, a pass deflection that almost resulted in an interception, another instance where he influenced an incomplete pass from Tim Boyle. So now Mike McDaniel even said that he's not a player that you just replace, but now the Dolphins at least have experience earlier in the season going without him. The AVG was holding it down, Andrew Van Ginkel, Emmanuel Ogbah, and now it's time for him to earn his pay as one of the highest, if not the highest, earning salary on the team. He's been down on the depth chart and not getting a lot of snaps, so it wasn't that long ago he was having those back-to-back 9-sack seasons, so he's got to bring that back. And he does have 4 sacks and an interception in very limited playing time this season. So maybe to try to resurrect that, get him going. And now Jason Pierre-Paul seems like he's about to be on board. A veteran who has been rested. He got onto the Saints practice squad not long ago, got into a game this past Sunday. He can provide some depth. I don't think you'll see too much of him early, but some sporadic snaps, a little bit of a pass rush, a motor. He can go with a high motor for those just limited snaps that he gets in there. So I think there's plenty there to work with.
And speaking about Jalen, let's go out to the chat for a second. Judy Williams says that MetLife turf needs to be removed. Hooked Up Joe. Silver lining, we were effective without Jalen Phillips. We got him some backup talent to rotate in and to fill the spot with AVG and Ogbah. Swampy McGee, why does anyone even have artificial turf anymore? Jay Rose, Phillips is okay, but it always seems like he never gets the sack. So just talking about those, Jalen, I think last year was kind of that high win percentage, but didn't necessarily get the sack. This year, he missed 3 games with the back and the oblique, or 4 games. He was really effective recently getting the sack, finishing that play.
Yeah, right. I hear him on that point previously, but 6.5 sacks in 8 games. So I mean, he's getting the sacks now. Yeah, he doesn't get the sacks outside of those 6.5 instances where, leading the team after missing 3 games. But so he was getting home. Plenty.
Yes, he was this year. He definitely was, and Hooked Up Joe saying that they effective without him, and now have some backup talent. What do you think about that? I look, I like their depth all around. We've seen it in the secondary. We've seen it at running back. We've seen it at offensive line. And so now we're going to see it a little bit more at edge rusher. We've seen Van Ginkel. We've seen Ogba. We know what they can do. Can they make the splash plays that Jalen Phillips had just started showing us, Furones, do you think?
Yeah, well, you saw a glimpse of that of AVG in that Patriots game,
Right.
Sunday Night Football. So they were playing without him there. So that was sort of the first instance where AVG had a chance to show that he's right there and can still produce the way he has. And he was shopped around a little bit in the offseason, but knew it wasn't a starting situation for him in Miami, but one that he could be a rotational guy. He even added on the inside linebacker rep so he could be more versatile in this defense. And then now it's even proved beneficial where he understands just the whole concept of the defense and has adjusted well to Vic Fangio's system early on. So it's made him a better pass rusher to add those off-ball linebacker reps that he's added into his game. So I think, he's a great guy to have for this exact scenario.
I got Game New Jersey. Welcome to the chat, saying Miami will be favorites in 5 out of the last 6. At Baltimore will be the underdog game, and you're correct on that one. And Furones, the turf, I got Game New Jersey also says MetLife turf is horrible. Turf is so cost effective, right? The maintenance is so low over natural grass. You don't have to have sun shining on it at all times and blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure that turf is ever going to leave. And then if you have a multi-purpose stadium, the turf holds up better than natural grass. The NFLPA could say something, but I don't know if they're enough to push it when you look at cost effectiveness and just practicality in multi-use stadiums. Do you think that artificial turf is going away or is even going to be reduced in the foreseeable future? Because I don't.
Yeah, and MetLife is a stadium that hosts 2 teams. The Giants own it, and then the Jets also play in it. So it's every weekend that MetLife Stadium essentially has a home game. They alternate who's at home given weeks. Maybe if one team is playing a different day, like this past weekend, as soon as we were up there writing, and they were already converting it into a Giants stadium, right. Removing all the Jets stuff, putting the Giants banners, removing the logos off the field, Jets to Giants, because Friday the Jets played, Sunday the Giants were hosting the Patriots. So at MetLife, it's even more difficult. And yeah, Mike McDaniel said the same thing, is that if there were very exact and convincing science to say that this adds to the risk of injury, then yeah, you probably do have to look at it. I'm sure you'll hear a lot more voices, a lot of people be louder about it after the season we've had, where we just had this Jalen Phillips situation, a complete non-contact injury. He's just taking off on a pass rush, very normal play, very routine, and to see the Achilles and you see the calf pop the way it does when an Achilles injury occurs. Aaron Rodgers earlier in the season, it's happened with several guys over the years at MetLife. So a lot of people will be clamoring for it. I think they're going to look into the science, what percentages say about injuries on turf versus on grass. And then if it's significant enough, maybe some move is made. But there's also cost effectiveness, a lot of other variables that are going to be considered by these decision makers.
Yeah, and Hooked Up Joe says we grow our grass outside the stadium and bring it in for the game. Russell says the NFL can afford it. Hooked Up Joe says we can grow grass for other stadiums too. Overnight shipping is available. Ross will clean up. So there are stadiums that have these pallets, these squares of grass, and we'll put them out onto the field, and some of them weave in the artificial grass, the turf, into real grass so that it's a little bit more durable. But I think artificial turf is going to stay with us for the foreseeable future, and players hate it. But that's kind of the times that we're in and that we've been in since, I don't know, the 70s with the Astrodome, maybe even before that. So I don't know. It's not going anywhere, unfortunately, and that's bad. Players hate it. Players absolutely hate it. So, all right, Furones, we're down to prediction time, baby. Who you got? Who you got? It is the Dolphins against the Washington Commanders up in Washington. I really have no faith in the Commanders. So I'm going to go Dolphins 31-14. We know that the Dolphins are, 8-0, right, against teams with losing records. Sam Howell, the Commanders quarterback, has been sacked 55 times. That's 15 more sacks than the next closest guy, which is Bryce Young, whose coach just got fired. Tua's got to watch those interceptions now. He's got 10, which is he had 8 last year in 13 games. Now he's got 10 in 11 games. But I'm going Dolphins 31-14. Who you got, Furones?
Yeah, not much scares me on the Commanders, especially the way they're going. They just fired also Jack Del Rio, their defensive coordinator. So I think possibly a scenario where the offense gets back going. The defense has been dominant. There's nothing I look at. Terry McLaurin is a talented receiver, but this Dolphins pass defense with Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard now on opposite sides is just looking elite, as well as the run defense. So, Brian Robinson and stopping that O-line up front. I have the Dolphins, what did I say? 31 to – I said Dolphins 31, Commendatori 13. That's a Sopranos reference. Like a commander, Tone.
There you go. We got a couple. Russell in the chat says 31-7. Hooked Up Joe, 31-9. He says that's his standard score for every game. LOL. I like that, Hooked Up Joe. Didn't we just have? I thought I saw the first 29-12 score ever in NFL history. I think we had last week.
Okay, yeah, a scoregami is what that is.
There we go. Mike says Fins 45-10. Judy says 34-13. She talks about Sam Howell. He's on pace to set the record for most times sacked in one season. And Washington traded away 2 of their defensive linemen before the trade deadline. That is correct.
By the way, that's a very impressive record to be sacked the most times, because that means you stayed healthy through all those sacks. I mean, you got to be a tough guy if you break the record for being sacked the most in a season, because you never got injured on any of those hits. So, I mean, actually, hats off to Sam Howell for taking that many hits, and he's still up there fighting.
There you go, baby. There you go. See, you're such a positive guy, Furones. I don't know if Sam Howell is looking at it that way, but maybe in mid-February he will look at it that way. He'll pat himself on the back.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not all his fault. The offensive line isn't blocking for him. If he sets the interception record, then, okay, that's because your coach keeps you in as you turn the ball over consistently and throw all these interceptions. You're taking all these sacks, then, I mean, you got to be a tough kid.
That's it. There you go, man. There you go. Papa Hog says 42-19. Stephen Smith, 28-10. Pretty Boy, 37-14. Hooked Up Joe talking about Sam Howell. He's a regular Tannehill. Tannehill and Russell Wilson, for like the first 4 years of their career, they went back and forth as the most sacked quarterback in the league, which, hats off to Russell Wilson. Hats off to Tannehill for being so durable. But Russell Wilson, look, you went to 2 Super Bowls. I think that was in his first 4 years. Maybe it was in his first 5. Or whatever it was. But, absorbing all those sacks, you still had success. Now, we know most of the success was due to Beast Mode and Legion of Boom. Nothing, not taking anything from Russell. Nothing at all, but that's how that team won. And look, we see Denver is now winning a little bit more when Russell's pass attempts go down a little bit. This is not a bash Russell Wilson segment, but it's
not taking anything away from Russell, like the football at the 1-yard line of the Super Bowl.
That wasn't Russell's fault. He didn't call that play.
Well, all right, it's still kind of his fault if you threw the interception.
Just hand off to Marshawn Lynch. That's the answer, right? I mean, that's the answer. So
audible. You got beast mode.
You got beast mode, baby. You got them for a reason there. So, all right, Furones. So everybody is taking Dolphins. Nobody is taking the upset. So
shocking.
I know exactly. It is shocking, isn't it? So, hey, thanks, Furones, to you. Thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. Great time in the chat, as always. Great time on Dolphins Deep Dive. We will see you guys next week, noon Tuesday, sunsentinel.com.